Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. English 12th. Goodbye, Mr. Chips. Chapters 11, 12, 13, 14. Short questions on Punjab boards. Previous annual papers of Lahore, Multan, Gujranwala, Sargodha, Rawalpindi, Sahiwal, Faisalabad, Bahawalpur, D.G.Khan and Jammu Kashmir boards. Chapter 11. Goodbye, Mr. Chips. What did the chairman of board of governors tell Mr. Chips about his retirement? What status did Brookfield enjoy during the headship of Mr. Ralston? Why did Mr. Chips not like Mr. Ralston? What did Chips finally say to Ralston about his retirement? What are the drawbacks of Mr. Ralston's personality? What sort of person was Ralston? What led Ralston and Chips into a row? How much was Ralston popular and respected in Brookfield? What did Chairman know about Ralston? What did Chips know about John Rivers, and what did he tell Mrs. Wickett about him? Why was Mr. Ralston not liked at Brookfield? Why did Mr. Ralston want to get rid of Mr. Chips? What did Chips reply when Ralston asked him to retire? Why did Ralston suggest Chips for retirement, and what was Chips' reply? Why did Ralston not like Mr. Chips? What sort of allegations did Ralston put on Chips? Why did Ralston want Mr. Chips to retire? Why didn't Mr. Chips and Mr. Ralston like each other? What was the result of row between Ralston and Mr. Chips? Why did Ralston leave the school? What were the Ralston views about Mr. Chips? What was the conflict between them about teaching method? How did news of Chips' quarrel spread? Who heard the quarrel between Ralston and Chips, and how did its news spread? How was Ralston running Brookfield Public School according to Mr. Chips? What to know about Ralston discipline in Brookfield School? How did Ralston want to run the school according to Chips? Did Ralston know the history and tradition of Brookfield? Describe the role of Ralston in the progress of Brookfield. What were the aims of Ralston as a headmaster? Describe Ralston as a head of Brookfield. What were Mr. Ralston's allegations against Mr. Chips? How did the people come to know that Ralston had insulted Chips? How did Chips react to the orders of Ralston? Why did Ralston ask Chips for retirement? In what lines was Ralston running Brookfield School? Who was John Rivers, and what did he say to Mr. Chips? What was the reaction of the people at the row between Chips and Ralston? How did Ralston raise the status of Brookfield? Why did Ralston quarrel with Mr. Chips? Why did the students, teachers, and parents turn against Ralston? Chapter 12. Goodbye, Mr. Chips. Why did Chips go to Wiesbaden? Why did Ralston leave the headship of Brookfield School in 1911? When and why did Mr. Ralston leave Brookfield Public School? How was Mafking Night celebrated at Brookfield School? What job did Mrs. Wickett do at Brookfield? When and why did Ralston leave Brookfield? Who was Mrs. Broll? How did Chips pass his time after his retirement? What were Chips' activities after retirement? Narrate the activities of Mr. Chips after his retirement. After Ralston, who was the new headmaster of Brookfield? Who was Chatteris? Who was Mr. Chatteris, and what kind of man was he? Who was the successor of Ralston, and what kind of man was he? When and why did Mr. Chips retire? How did Mr. Chips end up his career at Brookfield? Why did Mr. Chips decide to get retirement in 1913? What did Chips tell the audience about the captain of the school? Why was the big hall of Brookfield turned into a hospital ward? What type of farewell was given to Chips? How did Mr. Chips receive his farewell in 1913? How was Chips' farewell party and what did he say in his farewell speech? Describe briefly Mr. Chips' farewell speech. What kind of speech did Chips deliver at farewell party? What kind of speech did Mr. Chips deliver at the farewell party? How did Chatteris behave with Chips? What did Mr. Chips tell others about the lamp boy in his farewell speech? Why did Chips think to give up his mastership? Chapter 13 Goodbye Mr. Chips. How did Chips feel when he rejoined Brookfield? Describe briefly M. Blades. What happened in 1915? Who was Froster? What was the contribution of Brookfield during the World War I? What services did Brookfield School render during the World War I? What contribution did Brookfield School and its masters and students make towards England during war? What services did Brookfield School render during the World War? Why did Chips resign after the war? What did Chatteris read in the church? How did Chatteris die? Why did Chatteris request Mr. Chips to join Brookfield School again? Who invited Mr. Chips to join Brookfield again and why? Why did Mr. Chips join Brookfield School again? What personal problems was Chatteris facing when he requested Chips to rejoin the school? Why did Chatteris look worried? What administrative problems did Chatteris share with Chips? Why was big hall of Brookfield School turned into a hospital ward? What was Mr. Chips' reaction to the First World War? On what condition did Chips take the headship after Chatteris' death? Chapter 14 Goodbye Mr. Chips. How did Chips perform as the head of Brookfield School from 1917 to 1918? What was Chips' joke about abrandum? How did Chips feel when he rejoined Brookfield? What did Chips teach in Brookfield? What is Risol? What was the joke about Risol? What were Mr. Chips called pre-war? Why Mr. Chips was considered as pre-war man? What was Chips' opinion about beyond practice? What was new change in Chips? What was announced by Mr. Chatteris and later by Mr. Chips to the two headmasters on Sundays during the war? How did Mr. Chips perform his duties as the head of Brookfield? Give two examples of Mr. Chips' humor. Who was Max Staffel? Like, share and subscribe my channel Park Education Official.